Welcome back to another episode of Mocha Connect. I'm your co-host Monique, and today we have an incredible guest joining us. She's none other than the amazing Bianca J. Shelby, an engineering project manager, now a digital marketing and AI strategist with over 25 years of experience. She's led high-stakes IT projects, built multi-million-dollar businesses, and helped transform organizations like Coca-Cola and Mayo Clinic. Bianca's journey is all about reinvention, leadership, and balancing career with family life. Get ready to be inspired. So, Bianca, let's dive in. You started out as an engineer and then transitioned into project management. What was that turning point like for you? Was there a particular moment that really shifted your path? And
Yes. Well, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I was like, who is she talking to? Who is she talking about? But anyway, thank you so much, Monique. So, how I got into project management, like you said, I started off as an engineer, worked for Ford Motor Company in Detroit, Michigan, and I enjoyed my project. I enjoyed my work, I guess, at Ford Motor. I was there for about a year. One of the things that I didn't like is pretty much I sat at a desk and didn't have a whole lot of interaction with anyone else until we had like a weekly team meeting. It was very independent, solo type stuff. And as you know, or you can tell, from our conversations, I am very much a people person. And so I was like, well, what am I going to do next? And so my husband was in Detroit with me. He's like, I'm going to MBA school. And I said, okay, I'll go to MBA school as well, and moved to Atlanta, Georgia, part time while going to MBA school, working on my master's in business administration and got a degree in finance and information systems. After obtaining my MBA, I went to work for one of the world's largest technology companies, IBM. Worked there for about 3 years, and that was a great experience. I was what they called a road warrior, and I traveled 4 to 5 times out of the week at different client locations. I might be in one location all week, or I might have several locations. So I racked up a lot of miles during that time period as well. And then about 2.5 years in, I had my first child. And so I stayed off for a year, took maternity leave for about a year. Company was great with all of that. Came back working maybe 8 weeks from the baby to do just a week long training with the team building, and just our annual meeting, and went back on maternity leave. And so when I was on my way back in after about a year, I started working with my resource manager, and she said, Bianca, you are assigned to go to Washington, D.C. for the next 6 weeks. And I told my husband, I said, do they remember I have a baby? So I went back to her and said, Dolores, I have a baby. I can't just leave, do that road warrior thing. There should be some other opportunities within IBM. I want to go ahead and explore those. And she was not having it. I guess, she wanted to keep her team staff. So she was either you go on the road or you're out the door. And so prior to that, I had an engagement manager that I worked with at a client site. And I remembered, he said, Bianca, you would be a great project manager. You have excellent communication skills, organization skills. You know how to follow and push everyone to deadlines. And just you have a lot of skills of a great project manager. And so I remembered that. And I was like, okay, how do I become a project manager? I spent $200 on 3 books, ordered off of Amazon in the early days of Amazon. So I always tell everybody my books are probably packed by Jeff Bezos. And I made that transition. So once I did that, redid my resume, and pretty much the rest is history. Because once I redid my resume, I was getting 20 to 30 calls a day for people asking or having project management jobs. And it was phenomenal because my husband was like, I am so tired of this phone ringing. But it was a great thing for me because that launched myself into project management.
that's such an incredible journey, Bianca, and it really shows how those twists and turns can lead to something amazing. It's inspiring to hear how you took that advice, made that leap, and then suddenly had the phone ringing off the hook with opportunities. It's a great reminder that sometimes one bold step really can change everything. All right, let's keep rolling with the next question. You mentioned that a lot of your skills carried over from engineering, but what were some things you had to learn from scratch as a project manager?
I think in project management, communications was one of the biggest things. As I started working as a project manager, I always know you have to have a champion and you have to have a mentor, someone who can help direct you in how you need to go, providing constructive criticism and feedback. So my manager that I had, my mentor, she said, Bianca, communications, communications, communications. You can never over communicate. So as an engineer, one of the things they always said, engineers were not good communicators. So I made sure that I was an excellent communication, both orally as well as written. And then I had great organization skills because as an engineer, everything is about systems. Everything is about a process. You do things once and then you just automate and make sure you could repeat the same thing. So as a project manager, everything is about systems and processes. I understood people, process, technology. Those are skills that we learn as an engineer, and then I translated those same skills into project management.
Absolutely. That makes perfect sense. It's great to see how you turned those engineering processes into a real strength in project management. And it's clear that mastering communication really helped you bridge that gap. Thanks for sharing that. All right, let's wrap up the segment with one more question. You've balanced a thriving career and family life, and I'd love to hear how you managed to juggle it all. How did you find that balance, even if it wasn't always perfect?
And and then, like you said, it was not always perfect. It was more like you said, I'm trying to be in harmony. Over the years as a mom, sometimes I failed. I would say I failed as a mom on occasions, missing dance recitals. I missed 8th grade graduation, but that's just a part of life. And so I prioritize my family first, and I do everything that I could as a project manager ensuring that I was there for those monumental times. And so, as a project manager, it's all about the schedule. So making sure I keep the schedule not only for work, but also for my family, dance, cheerleading, basketball, whatever. And then always asking for help. And so as a project manager, I have a lot of help because I have people that don't directly report to me, but they're working for me. So, being able to ask for help during that time. And I think I had the support of my husband as well as family. So it was a juggling act, I would say, kind of difficult, but I managed. And I think the other thing that I learned, I was a consultant. So I went from a full-time employee to a consultant or a contractor. And just a quick story about that. So I was a contractor at a company that was about 30 miles from my house. And I had my first child. She was probably about 2 years old. My husband was working out of town and the daycare called me. And they're like, Miss Shelby, your child is sick. And so I told my manager, I need to leave because the daycare called, my child is sick. And so, I didn't have support right away at that time. So I had to leave and go pick up my daughter. And then the next day I had to call out. I had plenty of time. I'm a contractor, so, I can ebb and flow, but I understand that the client has deadlines. I make sure I'll get those done. And that was before remote working. And so when I came back, the lady had a little attitude that I took a day off because I had to nurse my daughter back to health and had doctor's appointments. And so that just made me think, okay, just imagine if I was a full-time employee and people were acting like that. Now I'm a contractor. And so really that launched my career to be independent, become an entrepreneur. And so once I became an entrepreneur, ran a project management company, I actually had more flexibility, more time, worked probably more hours, but it was much more rewarding. And then I had flexibility, especially when it came to my family, to prioritize that I could be a classroom mom, I could go on field trips, and then I became what's called Mama Lion and watch over the whole pride. So, I had more flexibility in my schedule. And so I could be concerned about my child as well as other children. So I think that's just a challenge and balancing act that I had to do, but overall, it's been very rewarding.
Absolutely. And it's amazing to hear how you turned those challenges into an opportunity to create a life and career that worked better for you and your family. It's clear that being an entrepreneur gave you that freedom and flexibility to really be present in all the ways that mattered. And I think a lot of people will find that really encouraging because it's a reminder that balance doesn't have to be perfect. It's about finding the harmony that works for you. So thank you for sharing that, Bianca. I think that's a perfect note to wrap up our first segment. Thanks for letting us speak in your journey.
Thanks a lot, Monique. I look forward to talking to you on the next time. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
You're so welcome, Bianca. I really enjoyed our chat and I'm looking forward to next time as well. Have a wonderful day and talk to you soon. Bye for now.